very good afternoon. May I extend a very warm welcome to all our visitors today. The ceremony will start soon, but I have a few announcements to make. First, can I ask you that you check that your mobile phones are turned off or on to silent? I should now like to explain the procedure to be adopted at the end of the ceremony. The Pro-Chancellor will declare the congregation closed. At that point, would you please stand and remain standing until the procession has left the hall. Guests will then leave the hall via the main staircase behind the procession. Pottering staff will usher you from your seats into the center aisle at the appropriate time, starting from the front. Should there be any reason to vacate the hall during the ceremony, you will receive instructions from the University Secretary, who will be on stage. Finally, I would remind you that everyone here is invited to tea after the ceremony. The tea will be held in the Parkinson Court. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. There's a bit of bobbing up and down today, but please be seated now. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I extend a very warm welcome to you all on this very special day for the University of Leeds. This congregation for the installation of the Chancellor and for the conferment of degrees is held in accordance with the Charter, statutes and ordinances of the University, and I have great pleasure in declaring it open. I now call upon the University Secretary.
Vice-Chancellor, on the recommendation of the University Council, the Court, at its meeting on 6 December 2017, unanimously elected Professor Dame Jane Frances as Chancellor of the University in succession to Lord Bragg of Wigton. I would now invite the congregation to stand to welcome the Chancellor-elect.
I haven't even started yet. By virtue of the authority vested in me, I install you as Chancellor of the University of Leeds. Jane, welcome back to the University. We are delighted to have you as our new Chancellor.
Thank you.
I rather like this music. I wonder if we might have it at every graduation ceremony. I can't see Karen, but I don't think she's very sure about that idea. So, ladies and gentlemen, at the dawn of 2 exhilarating weeks of degree ceremonies, it is my honour and a great personal privilege to introduce Jane Frances as the new Chancellor of the University of Leeds. Jane is a distinguished scientist and an inspirational teacher. She has a long career in academia, which includes 22 years as a highly valued member of this university. Since 2013, she has been the Director of the British Antarctic Survey. As the first woman to hold this post, she is making her own indelible mark on the proud history of British polar exploration and research, a history which, by remarkable coincidence, tracks the early development of this university, almost to the day. Sir James Clark Ross located the North Magnetic Pole in 1831, just as the Leeds School of Medicine was being formed. A Dundee-built whaling ship was taken into Royal Navy service as HMS Discovery for the British Arctic expedition to the North Pole in 1874, just as the Yorkshire College was taking root on this very spot. And the Royal Research Ship Discovery, launched in 1901 and designed specifically for scientific research, carried Captain Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton on their first successful trip to the Antarctic, returning in 1904, just as the University of Leeds received its Royal Charter. Also in 1904, the Polar Medal was inaugurated. It was inaugurated for members of Captain Scott's expedition to Antarctica and was then awarded to the crew of Shackleton's later expeditions, which returned in 1909 and 1917. Almost 100 years later, in 2002, the Polar Medal was awarded by the Queen to Jane Francis for her outstanding contributions to British polar research. Later, in 2014, Jane was awarded the prestigious Koch Medal by the Geological Society of London. She was given this medal for, and I quote, playing a pivotal role in shaping and directing Earth science carried out in the polar regions, and also for being an outstanding chair of the operations group of the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meetings, the international forum of nations concerned with legal and operational issues in Antarctica. In the 2017 New Year's Honours List, Jane was appointed a Dame Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, an order which recognises extraordinary service in foreign affairs. She was awarded this award for her unfailing service to polar science and diplomacy. Of course, she holds many other national and international awards, including an honorary doctorate of science from the University of Leeds, which is obviously one of the most prestigious. In her day job, Jane had overall responsibility for moving the vast Halley 6 research station for 23 kilometres following the detection of a new and unpredictable ice crack on the Brunt ice shelf. And with typical generosity of spirit and gritty determination, she motivated, encouraged and praised the exceptional team of people who carried out this complex and hazardous project, and she did so every inch of the way. And having convinced the Chancellor of the Exchequer to part with £200 million, he's now editing the Evening News, which is actually, of course, the Evening Standard. Having parted with £200 million for Jane's great projects, she is awaiting delivery of the Royal Research Ship Sir David Attenborough, one of the most advanced polar research vessels in the world, with leading-edge technology to study the ocean, the seafloor, and the atmosphere. In one of Jane's most skilled acts of diplomacy, Boaty McBoatface has found his place as an auto sub, confined to underwater duties. Things have come a long way since Scott used the rudimentary scientific instruments which can still be seen in a tiny room buried deep in the wooden hull of the Royal Research Ship Discovery. And things have also come a long way at this university, at the University of Leeds. This is now a community of more than 40,000 people committed to academic excellence, which we define through high-quality education, a strong and dynamic research base, remarkable international reach, and a track record of economic, social, cultural, and environmental development. We do this here in this great city of Leeds, but also around the world. The university is part of a worldwide endeavour to tackle the challenges of global health, energy, food and water security, climate and cities. And we're a university that knows the importance of culture and social justice in tackling the inequalities inherent in these challenges. We're also one of the most technologically advanced universities in the UK, recently selected to play a central role in important national initiatives, including the Met Office Academic Partnership and the Turing, Royce and Rosalind Franklin Institutes. Ladies and gentlemen, as Chancellor, Jane Francis epitomises all that is good about Leeds. As a leader and our advocate, she personifies the university's commitment to academic excellence and our values of integrity, inclusiveness, community, and professionalism. She has said, and I quote, that helping to inspire passion and achievement is what excites me in my work. Surely we cannot ask for more than that. For me, Jane will continue to be an inspiration to our students and our staff, both as an academic with an exceptional track record in education and research, and as someone who has pushed the boundaries of human endeavour. Her concern for the beauty and the fragility of Antarctica and her determination to address issues of global importance will capture the imagination and excite current and future generations of students. She is the perfect ambassador for a university intent on making a difference in the world. Above all, given Jane's long and distinguished association with the university, her appointment sends out, I think, an unequivocal message, a message of self-confidence in the university's inner strength and ability, and it reinforces the importance of knowledge, understanding, the astute use of objective evidence, and humanity in tackling global challenges. She will also ensure that we continue to stretch the intellectual horizons of our students. It therefore gives me great personal pleasure to welcome Professor Dame Jane Elizabeth Francis, DCMG, as the 7th Chancellor of the University of Leeds.
Thank you very much, everybody. Before I start with my prepared speech, I'd just like to say thank you to these guys who are all members of the university academics. And some of you may have already realised that the music that they've played, 2 pieces so far, are actually taken from my Desert Island Discs choice. And that was absolutely spectacular because Lou Reed's Perfect Day is a song which most Antarctic people know about because, you know, it just says there's a perfect day in Antarctica when the wind is still, when the air is full of those glittery bits of snow, when the sun shines, and it's just the perfect description of tranquility. So your rendering of it has just been absolutely perfect, and I've been taken back to a certain time in a tent in Antarctica when we just celebrated a perfect day. So thank you very much again. So not all the music is from Desert Island Discs, but you can see if you can guess which bits were. So thank you, Vice-Chancellor. I am truly honoured to take up this post, and it's really great to be formally associated with the university again, because I had such a fantastic career here. And being a Chancellor is not quite something you put on your career plans, is it? So I was really quite surprised and very honoured when Alan rang me up and asked me to be Chancellor. But you know, without a doubt, it was a yes, because who would like such a nice job as shaking hands with students on the happiest day of the year, you know, when they're just graduating? So it's a fantastic thing. So I've been here before on this stage, and I'm very conscious of the seats behind me, and I'm truly impressed that every seat is full, because sometimes at graduation there are not so many people there. So thank you everyone for turning up. You look truly splendid in your multicoloured gowns. And I sat there for 22 years watching the happy students and then the proud parents come on here. And you know, I have to mention Kenton. Where's Kenton? Who's one of the honoured graduates who you'll meet later. Kenton was one of the first students I taught when I was here in Leeds as a lecturer. So you'll meet Kenton, who's become, you know, a very famous mountaineer. It's also a really great honour to follow Lord Melvyn Bragg, who was a Chancellor before me. And I remember Melvyn used to stand here, because he was much taller than I was. And one of the things I remember about seeing Melvyn from behind, he used to stand here like this, and he had very elegant long fingers. And he used to stand here and wave his fingers like this, where he gave, you know, spectacularly good speeches. So I'm not going to do that, because I haven't got long fingers and I'm not tall enough. But I have learnt one thing quite recently from Sir David Attenborough, who, because of our association with the ship. So I was been watching what Sir David Attenborough does, and what he does is he does this. And if you watch him, he speaks like this, and it expresses all sorts of things. So you can expect some arm waving from me in future, because I think it really is a great gesture. So thank you very much. So it really was a great pleasure to be here as a member of staff. And you know, so many students have been through Leeds over just the time that I was in as a member of staff. And I meet Leeds graduates everywhere, on the tube, in government, you know, in businesses overseas. Every now and then a student or a young person, or sometimes an older person, will come up to me and say, "You don't remember me, but you taught me in 1992 or something like that, you know." And they have taken all walks of life. So their education was superb, and they really have gone on to do the most amazing things. So how can I support the university as Chancellor? Well, as Alan said, for the past 5 years, I've been Director of the British Antarctic Survey. That's a government research institution. So I've been working much closer to government than I would have done in a university. And it's really quite a different life. And it's quite interesting for me to be able to see now where the decisions are made that affects university and academic life, and how how some of the ideas are come up with and how they're put into practice. And some of it will probably surprise you if you knew. So I hope that by having that kind of experience, I can bring something to Leeds in terms of helping understand how government is shaping its agendas, particularly now in this time of change. I was going to say a word that Alan said we mustn't mention, but times of change when there's a new structure in academia, in science in the UK, and we have to look for partners overseas, and we have to understand the different way that funding is allocated. So I hope that I can in some way help with that. And I hope that I can also inspire students to follow their dreams. I have to say that it never occurred to me years and years ago that I would end up in Antarctica and the Arctic, but it's a pretty special life I've led, I think, going to the polar regions. They are truly inspiring places. And you know, over the sort of past years when I've been doing my research in the polar regions, I've seen them be sort of become from what was a nice place to go, a nice adventure, interesting science that tells us something about Antarctica, to actually becoming a real focus for how the Earth is going to respond to change in future. So, you know, the polar regions now contain huge amounts of water in that ice. They are changing. The polar regions are the places on Earth that change the first when the climate changes, and they change fast. And so the research that's being done in Antarctica is something which is going to tell the whole world about how the whole world is going to be affected by climate change. What happens in the polar regions affects us here, even in Leeds, mostly through melting glaciers, sea level change, through how the climate is being affected in Antarctica that affects life here in the UK, how the oceans are changing, and it's happening down there first. So if I look a bit worried at times, it's because I know maybe what's coming, but it is quite an inspirational place to work, and I hope I can pass on some of that inspiration to students. And anyway, you just have to mention the word penguin, and it really gets everybody engaged. So I'm really delighted to see so many friends here today, lots of people in the audience who've been wise mentors, fantastic colleagues, and really good friends, and some people in the audience who've shared the most awful jokes with. I'm talking about the deans, who I really enjoyed working with, and we had a very special relationship in, well, telling stupid jokes really, mainly, to get through life. So thank you all for all your support that you've given me over the years. And I'm really delighted that you have some really great people here who I admire greatly as honorary graduates. So you're going to meet them in more detail in a moment, but I'd just like to tell you how I know them and where my admiration comes from. So Kenton, who you will recognise when he stands on the stage, I taught as a geology student, who now is very famous for climbing Mount Everest and other high peaks many, many times. So just fantastic to see how he's developed. Jane Rambo is head of the polar regions in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Jane and I met, we were seasick together on a polar ship crossing the Drake Passage. And Jane and I go through many adventures, from everything from international politics about Antarctica and their sensitivities with certain countries. And also, currently, I've learned an awful lot about fishing in the Southern Ocean, as Jane will tell you. Mary Fowler, Professor Mary Fowler, international geophysicist and master of Darwin College in Cambridge, and I am really honoured also to be a fellow of Darwin College and joining with the activities there. Alice and I are on committees together, and Alice, I think, you're such an excellent scientist, but also Alice can communicate the science in fantastic ways, in really high-class scientific communication. So thank you, Alice. And Gabby, one of the leading climate scientists of our time, who is a real honour to have here in the audience. And Peter, not last but least, Peter started his career. You'll recognise his voice when he stands up, when you meet him. Yes, even if you don't recognise his face currently, but Peter's a weatherman, and he started his life as a meteorologist in Antarctica, in our Halley station, the one that's now on an ice shelf that's cracking. And you couldn't, you know, if you're going to study the weather, why not study it in the most extreme place on Earth where the weather is extreme? So it's absolutely fantastic that these people are now, such great people are now associated with the university, and I'd like to just thank you all for coming today. So thanks to all of you, thank you Vice Chancellor for this really great honour. I am truly delighted. I'm truly delighted to be part of the university again, and I hope that I can serve you all in future in a very good way and inspire your students. Thank you.
the palm of his hand, and they ran through his fingers like grains of sand, and one little star fell alone. Then the Lord God hunted through the wide night air for the little dark star on the wind down there, and he stated and promised he'd take special care so it wouldn't get lost again. Now a man don't mind if the stars grow dim and the clouds blow over and darken him, so long as the Lord God's watching over them, keeping track how it all goes on. But I've been walking through the night and day till my eyes get weary and my head turns gray, and sometimes it seems maybe God's gone away, forgetting the promise that we heard him say. And we're lost out here in the stars, little stars, big stars, blowing through the night. And we're lost out here in the stars. Big stars, blowing through the night. And we're lost out here in the
Hello, I'm doing Musetta's waltz aria, and there's no nice way to put it. Musetta is a little minx, and she thinks that everyone's in love with her, and in this scene she's actually trying to get her boyfriend to be jealous. So I was wondering if... I don't know, is there anyone else? Would you mind being jealous throughout?
I'll try.
Great.
Ed a sapor all'olla bramo final song in our little set is Old Man River from Showboat by Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein II. And unfortunately, that means I'll not be flirting with him. But in this song, Joe is thinking to himself about the fact that there's problems in his community. And he wishes that everything could be like the Mississippi, just rolling along without a care in the world.
There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the world got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free? Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along. He don't plant taters, he don't plant cotton, and them that plant them are soon forgotten. That old man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bale, you get a little drunk and you land in jail. I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. That old man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bale, you get a little drunk and you land in jail. I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. That old man River, he just keeps rolling along.
I call upon the Secretary.
For the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, to be presented first by Ms. Suzanne Glavin, Head of Sport and Physical Activity, Kenton Edward Cool.
Chancellor, the first time he climbed the world's highest mountain, Kenton Cool called home. "I'm on top, Mum," he said breathlessly. "I'm on top of Everest." Her understated reply was the epitome of British reserve. "That's nice, dear. If you want to speak to your father, he's out walking the dog." Such composure is in stark contrast to the infectious enthusiasm of the record-holding mountaineer, avid adventurer and Leeds graduate. Over 2 decades, Kenton has established himself as a supremely skilled mountaineer on the world's most challenging peaks. His achievements are towering. He has climbed Everest twice in 1 week. He led Sir Ranulph Fiennes up the Eiger, raising £2.7 million for charity, and also to the Everest summit. And he was first to climb the Everest Triple Crown of Everest, Nupties and Loties in a single expedition. Barely 7 weeks ago, he scaled Everest for the 13th time, a European record. High-altitude mountaineering requires technical, physical and mental qualities which are beyond most of us. Strength, determination and stamina must be underpinned by self-belief and absolute focus. As a professional mountain guide, Kenton is responsible for building and leading teams of climbers up peaks in some of the Earth's most inhospitable places. The risks are high and the margins for error low. Kenton arrived at Leeds in 1991 and was taught by you, Chancellor, when you began lecturing that year. A member of Leeds' outstanding mountaineering club, Kenton bemused fellow students by climbing along the stone walls below the Henry Price building and honed his skills at Kinsley Crag and Malham Cove. As a geology student, he was equipped to identify which rock walls would bear his weight and which might not, even if he did miss some of your classes, Chancellor. Graduating in 1994, Kenton aspired to join the elite International Foundation Mountain Guide Association, but 2 years later, he shattered both heel bones after a terrible fall. Against medical expectation, he recovered following surgery. His subsequent achievements are all the more remarkable, given that he still experiences bouts of chronic pain in his heels. Kenton Cool says that his goal is to inspire the next generation, but actually, it seems to me that his extraordinary achievements and example serve as an inspiration to us all, to every generation. Chancellor, I am delighted to present to you for degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, Kenton Edward Cool.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Congratulations.
And to be presented now by Professor Stephen Scott, Dean of the Faculty of Mathematics and Physical Sciences, Peter John Gibbs.
Chancellor, Peter Gibbs was brought up in the Lake District, where his love of the outdoors fed an interest in weather. His earliest weather memory is of his father digging through a roof-high snowdrift in the winter of 1962 to 63. Peter's career as a meteorologist began in 1979. After graduating in physics and geography, he spent over 2 years in the Antarctic with the British Antarctic Survey. In Spartan living conditions and near isolation, Peter was responsible for meteorological observations at Ice Station Halley on the Brunt Ice Shelf, collecting data which contributed to the discovery of the ozone hole. In the second year, he was base commander. That was a year marked by a fire in a hydrogen generator shed. Rumours persist, which link Peter, a towel, and a radiator. Well, we'll stop there. It was also aptly a year of extreme weather. 198 days of falling snow, 222 days of drifting snow, a record at the time, and a record low temperature of minus 41 degrees centigrade. Peter joined the Met Office in 1982, where his career included forecasting for tornado jet pilots, for rocket trials in the Outer Hebrides, and for chicken farmers in Norfolk. There's some connection there, but I can't quite make that out. Peter's television debut in 1993 was with the BBC's Look East programme in the fine city of Norwich. He moved to the BBC's Weather Centre in London in 1997. When he left the BBC in 2016, he had broadcast across all the BBC's channels. He continues to appear on Radio 4, on Gardener's Question Time, and Costing the Earth in particular. Peter returned to Antarctica in 2016, reporting for the BBC's Horizon programme on the Halley Station's work on the long-term changes to the atmosphere and climate. The landscape looked the same, but the station was much altered. Modern communications had reached Antarctica, and the poorly heated wooden huts inside steel tubes were long gone. Now a freelance broadcaster, Peter maintains his interest in climate change. He works with several organisations on modernising and improving access to weather and climate services across Africa, potentially benefiting smallholder farmers. He retains strong links with the scientific community through his work with the Royal Meteorological Society, of which he is a fellow. Peter has said that his biggest ambition is to fly through the eye of a hurricane. We hope he fulfills it, and his second biggest wish, which is to come back. Chancellor, it is my great pleasure to present to you for the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa, Peter John Gibbs.
Said it wasn't him who started the fire, but that's what they all say in Antarctica.
But I was the last one in there. So.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. Welcome.
Thank you.
For the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa, to be presented first by Professor Simon Bottrell, head of the School of Earth and Environment, Christine Mary Rutherford Fowler.
Chancellor, in an age of globalisation and unprecedented mass travel, one could be forgiven for thinking that the era of great exploration and discovery lies behind us, and that there is little left for us to map. The reality, of course, is very different. We have barely begun to explore our oceans, and there is even greater potential for remote exploration within and underneath the surfaces of the Earth. This is exploration that will enrich our understanding of our planet's structure and allow us to map the huge span of its history and its likely development. And this is the exploration being undertaken by Professor Mary Fowler. Mary is a leading light in geophysics, the study of the Earth by quantitative physical methods. With a background in mathematics and earth sciences, her work has an exceptionally strong methodological foundation. She has achieved remarkable clarity of insight into both the Earth's surface and its deep interior. Her research has illuminated the biogeography of deep-sea hydrothermal vent faunas, the formation of sedimentary basins, magma chamber processes, and oceanic crustal structure, including the first use of synthetic seismogram techniques. Her book, The Solid Earth, An Introduction to Global Geophysics, is acknowledged around the world as a core text for undergraduates. It provides clear and scholarly analysis and a pathway to more advanced methods for addressing and for framing the next set of questions that may arise. From a distinguished academic family, her great-grandfather was Ernest Rutherford, Mary is also an inspiring academic leader. In 1992, she returned to the UK from the University of Saskatchewan to head the Department of Earth Sciences at Royal Holloway, where she later became Dean of the Science Faculty. Her publication record is formidable, but she's also undertaken many editorial and advisory roles, and she has served with great distinction on some of our foremost academic bodies, becoming, for example, Vice President of the Royal Astronomical Society. In 2012, she was elected Master of Darwin College, in which role she has taken Cambridge's largest graduate-only college from strength to strength. Frank Borman, the NASA astronaut and commander of Apollo 8, once said that exploration is really the essence of the human spirit. Mary's work embodies that spirit and the curiosity that goes with it. Chancellor, it is my great pleasure to present to you for the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa, Christine Mary Rutherford Fowler.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
To be presented now by Professor Piers Forster, Director of the Priestley International Centre for Climate, Gabriella Clarissa Hagel.
Chancellor, great achievements are invariably based on some combination of natural talent and hard work. This is certainly true of Professor Gabrielle or Gabby Hegel, whose outstanding hard-won achievement across climate science have inspired a new generation of researchers, but at the same time, she has really demystified the art of success. Gabby was born in Munich, where she spent her undergraduate and postgraduate days, and she graduated with a PhD in mathematics from the city's Ludwig Maximilian University. She moved to the United States of America in the late 1990s, where she held research positions at Texas A&M universities and at University before she returned to Scotland. Sorry, she didn't return. She came to Scotland for the first time. She didn't come to escape Donald Trump then, but perhaps she did, and to take up a chair at the University of Edinburgh. Gabby's research has really focused on understanding the causes of climate change over the last 1,000 years. She pioneered statistical techniques for analysing the Earth's temperature change, and she particularly could separate the role of human activity from the role of changes in the sun and volcanoes. And in essence, it was your work that first to prove to society that it was humans with 99.9% confidence it was us that were really causing the Earth's climate to change over the last 100 years. Gabby's ongoing research does really build on these statistical techniques he developed to understand extreme temperature and precipitation changes. Not long after Cabby moved to the UK, her partner Tom, a geologist, sadly died of cancer. And it did leave Cabby with 2 young sons to support. She always had been impressively honest about falling short of perfection, both in her family and in her work life. And you can often hear her complaining about things and really kind of sharing her experiences with her younger researchers and with women in particular, and she's really encouraging. And I think that's been of tremendous value to the next generation of researchers. One of Cabby's greatest achievements, I do think, was trying to build bridges across the international research community. In 2013, we both had the job of being an author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Synthesis Report. But it was really through Gabby's hard work that she got physical scientists, social scientists, and economists all working together. And it was really talking together for the first time. And it was by doing that that this report provided the underpinning for the 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change. This and her many other achievements were recognised in 2017 when Gabby was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society on the outstanding achievements. Chancellor, it is a great pleasure to welcome Gabby to Leeds, where she has been an inspiration to many of us. I personally honour to present to you for the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa, Gabrielle Clarissa Ergo.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa. Well done.
And to be presented by Professor Lisa Roberts, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research and Innovation, Alice May Roberts.
Chancellor, whether it originated in the field, the laboratory or the office, the groundbreaking research of leading universities helps us to understand our past, to improve our present and to prepare for our future. Today, we celebrate an academic who excels in taking new insights and knowledge from university laboratories and lecture halls into the nation's living rooms. A prolific writer and broadcaster on anatomy, physiology, evolution, archaeology and history, she is an articulate voice for the importance of education and learning in society and an inspirational figure. Professor Alice Roberts is familiar to millions through her broadcasting. She has presented television series including Coast, The Incredible Human Journey, The Celts, Horizon,
and BBC Radio 4's Costing the Earth. She is also a talented writer, and a recent book, The Incredible Unlikeliness of Being, was shortlisted for the Wellcome Trust Book Prize in 2015. In a growing field of science communicators, Alice Roberts excels by opening up subjects with expertise, enthusiasm, and an enviable clarity, never hiding behind technicalities or jargon. Her own academic expertise is in anatomy and physical anthropology. This takes her tens of thousands of years into the past and all around the world, giving her a deep sense of our shared history and humanity. Alice has spoken about the artificial division that has emerged between the sciences and humanities, and of her ambition to bridge that gap, recently saying, "Somehow this century, we need to put science back into our culture." This perhaps reflects her own background. She excelled both at art and the sciences at school, and aspired to be a surgeon. And after qualifying as a medical doctor in 1997, she taught anatomy, and then based her PhD on her studies of human origins and diseases in ancient skeletons. Her television debut came in 2001, quickly displaying an exceptional talent, relaxed, engaging, and invariably well-informed. Since 2012, Alice has been Professor of Public Engagement in Science at the University of Birmingham. And alongside her teaching and research, she's a strong supporter of academic engagement with wider audiences. Through her work and through her example, she reminds us that universities must always strive to listen to and engage with people of all ages and all backgrounds. Chancellor, I'm delighted to present for the degree of Science, honoris causa, Alice May Roberts.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa. Well done.
And to be presented by Professor Hai Sui Yu, Pro-Vice Chancellor International, Jane Frances Rumble.
Chancellor, today we honor a preeminent individual in the field of polo science and policy, whose work has helped to preserve Antarctica as a natural reserve devoted to peace and science, and to ensure a central role for the UK in polo affairs. Jane Rambo began her civil service career in the Department of Environment, where she undertook a range of environmental and corporate policy roles. Having a degree in geography, she was able to merge her interests in the environment and in social policy in 2003, when she joined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to work on polo policy. She was appointed as the head of Polo Regions Department in 2007. In this role, Jane leads the UK's policy and science delegations to the annual meetings of the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Parties and Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. These are multi-week meetings involving over 50 countries, inherently complex, politically sensitive, and commercially significant. Jane is an outstanding diplomat, displaying a focused commitment to getting the best possible result, a complete command of the subject matter and of the rules, flexibility and ability in forming partnerships, and a persuasive but intensely humane approach to difficult negotiations. Recently, Jane was instrumental in showing that the UK achieved its aim of seeing the creation of a new marine protected area in the Ross Sea, an area of 1.55 million square kilometers. The result of this intensely difficult 6-year international negotiation will see a new level of protection for one of the least known and most fragile ecosystems on the planet. She has also contributed significantly to the development of Arctic policy. Jane's work has been recognized by her election to the Fellowship of the Royal Geographical Society. She's a policy fellow with the Centre for Science and Policy at Cambridge. And most recently, she was appointed as Officer of the Order of the British Empire in the 2018 Queen's Birthday Honours List. Jane's dedication to the protection of the polar regions shows in the passion, determination, and wisdom she brings to her Twitter feed, where she illustrates the impact of melting ice caps, profound ice loss, and the stark beauty of the regions. Chancellor, it is therefore my great pleasure to present to you for the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa, Jane Frances Rambo.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa. I call on Professor Simon Armitage.
A ceremony such as this, which includes the installation of a new Chancellor, should be a celebratory occasion. And for that reason, I went through my work to find positive and uplifting poems. Turns out that I don't have any. But what I do have is any number of poems about snow and ice, which I thought appropriate given today's interest in all things cold and frozen. It might seem incongruous and even cruel to be reading these poems during the longest and hottest period of weather we've had for ages. For ages, that's a technical description of a long period of time. You earth scientists and meteorologists, just let me know if you're not keeping up with the science here. The longest and hottest period of weather we've had for ages. But I guess that's the point. For those of us who remember the gripping and detoxifying winters of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, snow and ice have become nostalgic subjects. So in this poem, I set out on a local expedition, having promised to find icicles with their magical and miraculous properties and to give them to my daughter. The present. I shove up through the old plantation, larch out of season, drab, drained of all greenness, widowed princesses in moth-eaten furs, and stride out onto the lap of the moor. Rotten and rusted, a 5-bar gate lies felled in the mud, letting the fields escape. Winter is late and light this year, thin snow half puddled, sun still trapped in the earth, sludge underfoot all the way to the ridge. And no sign of the things that I came here to find, except in a high nick at the valley head, where a wet, north-facing lintel of rock has cornered and cupped enough of the wind for dripping water to freeze. Icicles. Once I unrooted some 6-foot tusk from the waterfall's crystallized overhang, lowered it down and stood it on end, then stared at an ice age locked in its glassy depths, at far hills bottled in its weird lens. These are brittle and timid and rare, and bleed in my gloved fist as I ferry them home. I'd wanted to offer my daughter a taste of the glacier, a sense of the world being pinned in place by a diamond-like cold at each pole. But I open my hand, and there's nothing to pass on, nothing to hold. Our new Chancellor, as a de facto geographer, will know that despite what the maps and atlases imply, the centre of the world is actually Yorkshire. And that West Yorkshire, despite appearing to be at one side of the county, is actually the centre of Yorkshire. And that the village of Marsden, you see where I'm going with this, despite being on the western border of West Yorkshire, is actually the centre of West Yorkshire, making Marsden, by my reckoning, the centre of the universe. And by complete coincidence, it's the village where I happened to be born and grew up. So this poem, Snow, is inscribed in a stone in a quarry at the side of Pewle Hill above Marsden, and forms one of 6 so-called stanza stones that form a trail of poetic beacons for about 50 miles along the Pennine watershed. It's carved on a lateral bedding stone at about head height, a sort of plimsoll line, daring the snow to reach the heights that it reached when we were kids. People have been going onto the moors of this region since Neolithic times to carve enigmatic messages of their desires and allegiances into exposed stones. It's a highly ritualized practice, given that for 99% of the time, there's no one to read them other than stars and sheep. And the Stanza Stones poems were an attempt to be part of that conversation with whatever is up there and out there. We had originally intended to buy a mountain and carve a poem onto the side of it which would be legible from the moon. But we didn't have the budget for that, which was probably a good thing in the end, and we dreamed up something more earthbound and human instead. Snow. The sky has delivered its blank missive. The moor in coma. Snow like water asleep. A coded muteness to baffle all noise, to stall movement, still time. What can it mean that colourless water can dream up such depth of white? We should make the most of the light. Stars snag on its crystal points. The odd, unnatural pheasant struts and slides. Snow, snow, snow is how the snow speaks, is how its clean page reads. Then it wakes and thaws and weeps.
I call on Professor Alice Roberts.
I am absolutely delighted to be here today and in such esteemed company. It's an incredible honour, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of my fellow doctorates today when I say that. I think that might be the limit of me speaking on behalf of my fellow doctorates, but you can decide afterwards if you want to adopt my words or not. What a wonderful day, what a perfect day to be here graduating at the same time as Jane Frances becomes the new Chancellor here, and I know she's going to be a wonderful Chancellor. And in fact, the correct form of words is, as we've already heard, that Dame Frances is now officially installed as the new Chancellor. But it does sound weird, doesn't it? It sounds like she's a magnificent piece of furniture, or a washing machine, or a biomass generator. Hang on a minute, though, because I think there's a possibility that Dame Frances really is, if you'll forgive me, a biomass generator. If we consider what a biomass generator does, it's something really quite profound. Plants do this incredible thing for us of capturing the energy of the sun, trapping that energy in molecules that form the very substance of their being. When we take that material and burn it, we release the trapped energy, and the furnace is then used to generate steam, which drives a turbine and gives us energy in a form that we can use in our homes, in our institutions, increasingly in our cars. Dame Jane Frances does something similar, or at least analogous. She consumes sunlight energy, and she did that at lunch. She uses the energy that she releases from the food that she eats in order to drive her basic physiological processes and keep them running smoothly, and I'm not going to say any more about those. But she also uses it to power her amazing brain. In fact, 20% of the energy that Dame Frances consumes is used to fuel her brain. And she's used that brain, as we've heard, to explore the natural environment through paleoclimatology, paleobotany, and polar science. She's used that brain to drive the direction of research globally in those areas. We need biomass generators of knowledge now more than ever. Many of us find ourselves worrying about the devaluation of those generators, the devaluation of experts. On Saturday, I found myself staring at my phone, which happens too often, furrowing my brow as I read an all too familiar tweet. Someone who openly admitted to knowing extremely little was arguing forcefully with someone else who'd spent a lifetime researching it. The subject of discussion was climate change, seemingly still one of the most emotive and controversial topics in the Twitter sphere, and even, dare I say it, in real life. I think everyone here believes that knowledge is power. This is why we're here, and that's what we're celebrating today. Not power for individuals, but the power to make society a better place. And yet, knowledge-driven society seems to be under threat. Michael Gove's infamous 2016 statement declaring that people in this country have had enough of experts is just one example. Now, to be fair, I think he may have meant it as a throwaway remark, or at least something peculiarly restricted to the debate over Brexit, but it sounded much more general, and it lodged like a thorn in the side in the body of experts that had been so lightly dismissed. Britain is often spoken of as a knowledge economy, and a knowledge economy needs experts as surely as a manufacturing economy needs makers, an agricultural economy needs farmers, and a hunting and gathering economy needs hunter-gatherers. So if people have had enough of experts, have they had enough of the knowledge economy too? Who are these people anyway? And how should universities, as mass generators of expertise and knowledge, respond? I do think it's all about trust. And actually, I don't think we should expect people to place their trust in experts, even scientific experts, out of blind faith or loyalty. We need to take trust seriously. We need to earn trust. And the only way of doing that is to engage meaningfully with the public. At the same time, we need to ask ourselves some hard questions. The benefits of knowledge, of science and technology, are not distributed evenly in our society or around the world. Even in Britain, the fourth largest economy in the world, I think it still is, the gap between rich and poor has grown larger in recent decades. Significant numbers of people are being left behind. Are our knowledge engines, our universities, really working then for the good of the many in society? Or are they becoming hopelessly elite, generating knowledge and power for a few to the detriment of the rest? I don't think we believe that they are, but if there's a danger that they could be, we have to take that seriously, and that's a reason to invest in public engagement even more. Universities, when we look at their histories, have always been philanthropic at heart, and I think they have incredible potential today, this century, to level the playing field, to spread knowledge capital, as well as the other more tangible, concrete technological benefits of research across society. Engagement is good for research, we know that. It's good for researchers, we know that as well. But it's more than that. It's part of what universities are for. It's part of the social responsibility that universities have, performing an enlightening function of making knowledge relevant, accessible, and usable for many. The environmental challenges that are facing us this century are profound. It's one of the most extreme risks that we as a civilization are facing. We need to work hard at finding answers, but we also need to work very hard at involving society as widely as we possibly can as we search for solutions. We need to understand why people turn away from science and real expertise and seek answers elsewhere, happy to wrap themselves in conspiracy theories that call on them to distrust experts. I don't think we can afford to walk away from those arguments. If we retreat into discussions behind closed doors, if we pull up the drawbridge of the ivory tower again, people are right not to trust us. Dame Jane Frances knows the power of knowledge and the power of spreading that knowledge for the maximal public good. And that's why she's asked each of us to be here today along with her. It's a great honour to be here, but it is also galvanising. Together we can all work at being not just generators of knowledge, but engines of change. Each one of us, all of us sitting up here, all of us, and all of you out there, is a biomass boiler. And today we're feeling more energised than ever. Thank you. I call on the Pro-Chancellor, if he's still not jealous.
I have to say I enjoyed the unscripted part considerably, probably more than the scripted part. So thanks for that. I've got a new best friend of the musicians. Chancellor, through the years, July has been a month for great beginnings. On this very day in 1877, the first ever Wimbledon Championships began. In July 1885, Louis Pasteur gave the first rabies vaccination. July 69 saw the first moonwalk, that's walk on the moon. And July 1978 saw the birth of the first test tube baby. And Chancellor, your installation is a great beginning for the university. What a celebration we've just seen. And on behalf of the Council, the University and everybody here, I would like to thank all those who have made this possible. Our honorary graduates who have added such lustre to this occasion, and of course Professor Alice Roberts, who has delivered such an engaging and thought-provoking vote of thanks on their behalf. Professor Simon Armitage, great reading, as well as the other bits around it, Simon, of your own poetry, helping us to at least think of cooler climes. The University Secretary and his team and everyone else involved in the organisation of this celebratory event. I know and I've seen how much energy and effort has been put into this and to such great effect. I also want to add my personal thanks to the University Secretary, who just before we started today whispered to me that with the weight of academic talent present, a double negative in my closing should be an absolute no-no. Thanks for that, Roger. And of course, our musicians. They've been fantastic in making this a perfect day, and I think you all should stand and take a bow. I think it's been fantastic. It's great to see such talent flourishing in the university and the university itself flourishing, in no small part down to the leadership of our Vice-Chancellor. We are extraordinarily fortunate to have an inspirational leader whose qualities include humility, integrity, and great wisdom and humanity, and without whom the university would not be in the incredibly strong and successful position it is today, and now further strengthened, Chancellor, by your appointment. Nearly 5 years ago, in my first weeks as a Pro-Chancellor, I had the opportunity of meeting you, Chancellor. Perhaps with some trepidation. I was new, and I was in awe of your achievements and standing in the academic community. However, I had no need to be nervous, as what I found in your office was only the slightest nod to these, the odd ice pick there and a few pieces of rock. And the person who emerged from behind the great pile of papers to greet me was obviously someone whose intellect and capability was more than matched by her humility and warmth and great sense of fun. What was also apparent, Chancellor, was your undoubted passion for your subjects, your students, and your passion for the university. And it's been mentioned in your own quote, and we've talked about energy today. You will be a great Chancellor, and we are delighted by your appointment. What I've seen during my tenure is that this passion, Chancellor, is shared across the university. As E.M. Forster said, one person with passion is better than 40 who are merely interested. And I have not come across anyone working here at Leeds or involved with the university who is merely interested. The 9th of July itself has seen some great events. The independence of Argentina, the royal assent for an independent Australia, the announcement that Marsden is now the centre of the universe, the discovery of element 102, the engagement of the Queen and Prince Philip, the cracking of the Enigma code, the first successful open-heart surgery without anaesthesia, and of course now the installation of our new Chancellor, with whom I am delighted to invite everyone to tea as I declare this congregation closed.